Good morning, everyone. It's good to be gathered today for campus worship. I'm Brian Martin Burkholder, University Chaplain, and our Director of EMU Faith and Spiritual Life. Along with student chaplains, we plan and care for the campus worship services. And this is our final one of the semester. In a way, just like students getting to the final exam or the final paper or the final big whatever, I feel it every semester. It's like, oh, this is good. And it's also good to come to the end of a series. And we'll be planning for next year as well. And we'll continue some things like the What's Your Story campus worship service. That's what this one is too, featuring our senior student chaplains. You'll hear a bit more about that from Sergio. During this 50 minutes, we invite you to enter in as fully as possible, be present with one another. And our guideline then is to put our phones and computers and pads and tablets away during this time to honor the intentions of worship and also being gathered together. If at all possible, if you're at the tables, we'd welcome you to come into the space. You can see that we're a smallish crowd, and if we could sit together, I think that also contributes to the feel. Sergio, take us on into this space, would you?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, good morning and welcome to campus worship. And yes, continuing the What's Your Story series by honoring our senior student chaplains. This features people sharing reflections on their sense of call and vocation, purpose and meaning. This morning we form a panel of Emily Suarez-Nunez, Mekonnen, Miranda Beidler, and Sara Kennel, reflecting on these prompts. Who or what impacted and inspired your sense of who you were in your childhood and youth? And what gave you meaning? How has your faith or spiritually informed your sense of calling and vocation / purpose? How are you preparing to lean into the fullness of your sense of call and vocation in your present life and future work? Can you give them a hand of applause, please?
So let's open with some singing together. Come on up, musicians, and lead us. As always in campus worship, we again welcome you to lean in as fully as you can for singing and musical worship, and it's also okay to observe. It really is accessible space, so enter as willing and able.
Now all the shadows vanish. Next up, we're going to be singing 490, which might be less familiar for some of you, but is also a fun one.
Jesus took a towel and he girded himself, and he washed my feet. Yes, he washed my feet. Jesus took a basin and he knelt himself down, and he washed, yes, he washed my feet. The heavens are the Lord's and the earth is his. The clouds are his chariot, glory in his throne. He made the mountains, set the limits of the sea, and he stooped and washed my feet. Jesus took a towel and he girded himself, and he washed my feet. Yes, he washed my feet. Jesus took a basin and he knelt himself down, and he washed, yes, he washed my feet. The hour had come, the feast was near. Jesus left his own, welcome to the end. Our Lord, let me sing, let me understand, when he stooped and washed my feet. Jesus took a towel and he girded himself, and he washed my feet. Yes, he washed my feet. Jesus took a basin and he knelt himself down, and he washed, yes, he washed my feet.
Good morning. The scripture reading today is Luke 4:14 to 21. Then Jesus, in the power of the Spirit, returned to Galilee, and a report about him spread through all the surrounding region. He began to teach in their synagogues and was praised by everyone. When he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. Then he began to say to them, "Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing."
So that passage was chosen for today because Jesus was saying what was important to him as far as call, as far as his ministry, as far as impacting the world and culture. And as followers of Jesus, we are called to do the same. So it's aspirational. That's the connection. And maybe we'll hear some of that in these reflections. So good to have you all here. What's your story? We've been featuring faculty and staff for sharing their sense of call and purpose and meaning. And today we feature our senior student chaplains. Some of them have been in the student chaplain role now for several years, in and out, depending on if they've been on an intercultural or maybe student teaching or such. And we're just delighted with the contribution that you've each made to EMU Faith and Spiritual Life in your unique roles as chaplains. So we're going to share the space best we can. You all have mics. If it's a handheld, make sure it's on. Just push the button once and you should have a green light there. And different ones can start and you can feed off of each other or share something unique. Would love to hear a bit of your upbringing. Who or what impacted and inspired your sense of who you were in your childhood, who you were in your youthful years, and what through the years gave you meaning? Maybe even a sense of identity and purpose. Who wants to jump in on that one?
I guess I can start.
And maybe you give your name too, and maybe a little bit of what you've done as a student chaplain. It's just a bit.
I'm Miranda. My focus as a student chaplain has been community engagement and working with the Center for Interfaith Engagement. In my childhood, I grew up in the church, in a Mennonite church in Pennsylvania, and so that definitely really impacted me as I was growing up. I had a pretty close group of friends at church. There were, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 of us who were all about the same age, and we grew up together in the church. And as we grew up, like, we got to middle school, and the church was like, okay, now we need a junior youth, because we were like at the oldest end of the younger generation. So we needed a junior youth, and now we need a youth group. And so kind of growing up with the same group of people really impacted me. I also grew up going to summer camp. I was a camper for many years, and then I was a staff member for 5. In between my sophomore and my junior year of high school, so exactly at the time of COVID, I became a staff in training, like a kind of a junior counselor at my camp. And that really solidified my sense of like, oh, I like to work with people, and I like to be with people. I had always thought I was an introvert. But then working at camp, you're with people 24/7 for however many weeks. And I found that I absolutely loved to be with people and to work with people. And that really led me to where I have all of my work, all of the things that I've done at EMU have been people-oriented. And now I'm going into teaching. And so definitely camp growing up was the first step in that direction. It was also a Christian camp, and so I grew up hearing the messages and the stories of Jesus, and that really helped me to develop my faith and grow in my faith in a different space than just my church, which I went to every week. Camp was a different space to be able to ask different questions and talk to people who had different perspectives, and that was really important for me.
We can just go in a row. I'm Sara, and my student chaplain emphasis has shifted a little bit over the years, but I would say is community, as well as service. It's been very central, and sustainability. And I think when I think of how to frame or like encapsulate the entirety of childhood, that's somewhat daunting of a task. So thanks, Brian. Shout out to you.
It's
Appreciate that.
truly.
But what comes to mind is the experience of goodness, truth, and beauty as sort of a continual thread. And when I say that, I mean the goodness of being cared for, the truth of being grounded in something, and the beauty of being in wonder or awe at the creation that was all around me. And so I grew up in a home that my dad is from a Mennonite background and my mom is from a much more evangelical background. And for those of you who know some of like denominational difference and cultural difference, those are two very different categories of people. And so there was always this sort of tension living between those frameworks, but they found there's a lot of beauty, truth, and goodness in both, and the way that they cultivated and taught me how to celebrate difference. And so some of those things that I pulled out that were very meaningful from childhood and representations of like God incarnate are the flowers that I grew up with. My dad loves flowers, planted flowers consistently, grape hyacinths and daffodils, and their complementary colors growing together. The fact that they register as beautiful to us is significant to me, and how he thought they were beautiful and kept planting them. And similarly, how he played piano and guitar and that celebration with music and the centrality of music in our family and the beauty of celebrating music together, that was beautiful and thus was also good. Food was also very central, and picking raspberries and running from bees and climbing cherry trees when I didn't know how to get down them. That gave me meaning.
Yeah.
Culture and having built traditions like driving to the farmland of my dad's hometown and how the smell of manure somehow became nostalgic. That's meaningful. Even in changing traditions, when land floods and stories are the only way to keep something alive, stories is the way that we sort of I maintain my childhood and hold on to the meaning that it gave me. And so even amid some of the more difficult experiences like bullies and exclusion and finding ways to fit in a world that rejects me in some way, that the experience of mental health issues in a family context, creating shame and stigma that shrouds my family, how we work through that created meaning. And it's not as if we ascribe these things to goodness, truth, and beauty, but there's a way to recognize how goodness, truth, and beauty persevere amid those things happening in my life. And so those are some other things I would sort of gently point to as informative, in sort of constructing childhood. So all the stories that I've lived up to this point, I accept that they've brought me exactly to this moment, and that I'm meant to live here, and the intentionality of that I get to have those stories. It's a mosaic of impact with thousands of people and places of significance. So hard to sum it up succinctly. But it kind of comes down to that in the messiness of childhood and the bruises that come out of falling out of those trees, that love was given to me and intermixed with all these mediums that goodness, truth, and beauty were experienced amid all of it, and allowed me to learn a language of love to live in with others.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily. My main focus through Student Chaplain has been service, specifically through Y-Serve. This year, it's my first and last year, unfortunately, being Student Chaplain, but I've really enjoyed it. Childhood. Childhood. Some say we're still living in it because we're in our early 20s, but I think it's important to note that my grandparents are pastors. My uncles are pastors. So when my parents were living in Uruguay, that was a central part of their life. The church was literally connected to their house. So the Evangelio nights, the reuniones, the meetings, the gatherings that happened on a weekly basis, both on Sundays and other days of the week, occurred right there at the home. So it was very central to who they were. And when they came to America, they brought it here. Excuse me. It was my godfather who was their connection here to a local church, and they attended, or we attended, once I was born, the Spanish service, and that was where we were for a long period of time. I just remember making the drive from Augusta County, Stanton area, to here, Harrisonburg, to go to church, and it was routine. We created a family here. Eventually, we stopped going to that church, but it was in one of those times that a local church from the Fishersville area came to our neighborhood and had an event, and we got connected to an American church, and that was different. And we went there for years. I got connected into their youth groups. I did a lot of also church camps I went to Christ in Youth Mix, which is, they do different like week-longs trips, and it was in Ohio that I went. I was part of FCA in middle school. I was one of the leaders both in middle and high school. So the youth was very interconnected with what I was doing, both as leadership and as just participating. Eventually, my parents divorced, and going to church didn't become that big of a thing for us, but I stayed connected to Jesus through those FCA leadership roles that I had, and I think that was impactful. Eventually, I learned that you don't have to, that Jesus comes in ways that aren't conventional, as I thought. I thought you would always, like, you had to go to church and he would come and speak to you, but it was within different ways that I saw, wait, this is a Jesus moment. Like, he is right here, right now. And that was pretty formative, especially my senior year when I was diagnosed with stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of cancer. And there was a lot of times where I was like, Jesus, what are we doing? What is going on right now? And I learned a lot about myself and the type of person that I want to be and who I want to become and what I want to do with my life. But the main focus, I guess, to wrap all of that up was I learned to see Jesus in ways that I didn't realize he could come and how helpful he is.
My name is Dia. My role in student chaplain is social media and a little bit of like free food room recently. I've been in student chaplain for 4 years now, and it's been really great. My identity. I came from pretty conservative Christian family. I was born in Ethiopia, for those of you who don't know. My denomination was Lutheran, and it's still Lutheran. But for me, my identity was shaped by the community that I was born and grew up in. The community that I was in was a community that loves to give back to their own community or the people who have been pushed back. I think when I was in Ethiopia, I didn't really understood what it meant to give back to the community or serve the community that I loved. Growing up, my dad really forced me to go to church for the longest time. I don't want to go to church because there's been a lot of confusion with my faith and identity. I'm like, why am I here? There's so many things that's going on in my life with my family, my parents, and I see those and I was like, oh, I don't want to go to church because I've been praying a lot, I've been talking to him, and I just don't see change in my life, and it felt like God wasn't with me. But then I have no idea, I don't know like when it changed, but there was a time I got up and I was just like, I need to go to church, this is what I want. I wanted to connect with God. Then I started going to church. I started forming my own family at church, and they really supported me. I started becoming more connected with the youth group that I have, becoming leader in the worship team, leader for the youth, teaching students, and it felt like there was a missing part in me that healed. So I realized quickly that like without anyone's help, without anyone's like pushing me to go to church, I love to go to church and I loved serving people. And my mom always told me that like even though you have 50 cents, make sure that you split it with your friends and give them something. And that's one of the things that I was just like, okay, I have energy, I need to give back to my community. And even though my family dynamic wasn't really great, but also praying and connecting with God was one of the things that really pushed me, especially coming from different cultural background that bring like different perspective in your community. Is hard to form that. And after I came to the U.S., I realized that like I am on my own, even though I came with my family, and I need to build up that. And I've seen a lot of issue that's going on in my community, within my friends, within my family, and I realized that one of the reason I can connect with God is just like giving my life to Him. And I got connected with a lot of churches that pushed me, that took me to be where I am today. And part of it is like coming to EMU and connecting with Duck family. I've been really blessed with a lot of affiliates that we have. Carlin was one of it. Talking to him, talking to his whole family, and challenging him with a lot of questions that my childhood, that my dad and my family members didn't answer to me, and him bringing me to church and connecting me more with God was one of the highlight. Coming from high school, my identity wasn't really great, but the people that I was surrounded with spiritually, and a little bit of Brian as well, I talked to you a lot about in one-on-one what's been going on in my life, and that's been shaping my life and my identity as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Oh, yes. And so some of you have opened, mostly you, I think you all have opened up this role of faith and spirituality in your lives, right? And so maybe take it a little further. How does your faith or spirituality inform your sense of call or vocation? And by vocation, we don't just mean career, we mean meaning, purpose, making a difference. And that can and is good if it can be expressed in a job, in a career. But it's bigger than that. It's more, it's deeper. Yeah, how does faith or spirituality inform your sense of call, purpose, vocation? Maybe even how you chose your major or why.
I can start. Coming to EMU, I always talked about this. I was a biochem major, and then quickly changed it to political science and social work. But the reason I did that is, again, I talked about it earlier. I came from the community that gives back what they have, and I've always been taught like that. Whatever you have, give. Your energy doesn't have to be money. Give back to the people that you love, even the people that you don't know. So I want to pursue immigration law, and that's been a hot topic nowadays. But I've seen a lot of people struggle, not only immigration area, but also people who have always been overlooked. So I want to give back to the community because of how my family shaped me. Even though we are dysfunctional, you still have to give it back the community. So community was like one of highlight.
Yeah, thank you.
I can go next. So I want to be a nurse. That's what I'm studying. Somehow, some way, I always knew I wanted to be in the medical field. In what ways? It has changed. I wanted to be a doctor, and then a nurse, and then a surgeon. And then I started as a CNA. I took a CNA course in high school. I was like, oh my gosh, I really love this. I get to mix science, which is tangible, and understanding, and something that I know and can see and read and have direct correlation with goodness and with love and compassion and giving, which I think is something that God gives to me. I think I was on the receiving side of what you're talking about, of like you grew up with giving a lot of things and being very giving and forthcoming. And growing up, I was on the receiving end of that. Being a family of immigrants, I'm first generation American, first generation college student. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for the longest due to caring for us, my younger sister and I, and just lack of job opportunities for her because of her immigration status. We did receive a lot of help. And so I think I've learned that now it's my turn to give back in similar ways of you, of whether it's monetarily or just with service. And I also think that I have seen that with my work here as student chaplain, especially within YServe, being able to organize things that build community, build those relationships, build those connections, just to care for people, just to share that bond, to deepen it, to strengthen it, to make it last longer. I also saw that with with our trip to Puerto Rico this past semester. It was beautiful. We got to go and help as much as we could with our inexperienced selves to build roofs for those whose roofs and homes got affected by Hurricane Maria. And what was the second hurricane?
Now I've forgotten in the moment, but go ahead.
But just additional.
Floyd, I think.
Floyd?
Something like that.
It was the constant hits of hurricane and tropical storms that affected the homes of Puerto Rico. And just being there made me feel fulfilled. We were living in what once used to be a retirement community. Dee and I did not have hot water. We had cold water. Not that we needed it, but it was something that was like, whew, good morning. That definitely woke you up. But even with that, the simplicity of it, I felt so fulfilled and I felt so happy to be there, and it was beautiful. The people there were beautiful. So getting to build that connection, getting to build that relationship, and also doing something tangible with my hands is something that I just absolutely loved, which I circle back to medicine. You have the tangibility, you have the science and what you see, the work in front of you, but you also get to see the work that you're doing with their hearts and their spirit and their minds by just getting to be there with them. And that's what I want to do. I want to be there with people and help them physically and emotionally and mentally and spiritually in ways that not everyone can.
Yeah, just to echo some of what has already been said, I appreciate both of you and the way that you do show up and give that to the people that interact with you. Coming to EMU, I think that I had a little bit of a different definition for what coming alongside means or meant. I'm a global development major. That actually hasn't changed since freshman year, which is kind of astounding. But I think that I took a gap year out of high school, and during that gap year, definitely developed a conception of myself as fiercely independent, and that my relationship with God was framed around, I have God, and that is my confidence, that is my force field, that is all I need, and people just get to be like a small little part of that. And coming to college and experiencing like a little bit of chronic illness and experiencing like the value and intention of relational community in this space taught me that coming alongside is less about this vocation that I had in mind of I am going to go and be this for these people, and I am going to make a difference, and me, and I, and myself, and this whole framework that was very narrow of who God is in the world, because God is not mine, but God is we together. And in that changing landscape, like coming alongside became much more about how do I engage as a humble partner? How do I recognize the privilege that I have in society? How do I recognize how my identity and the way that it bumps up against other people's identities impacts them? And how does that change the way that we experience faith and spirituality? How does that change the way that we come together and celebrate each other and know each other? And I would even point a little bit into that childhood experience of like learning how to deal with that tension and difference. I didn't mention this, but like living in other countries for brief periods of time, learning to live with that tension in difference, learning to celebrate difference, and see the light of God in, or what we understand to be God in all of that difference, is something that has really impacted how I think about vocation. And I would say I'm hoping to be in the education field or something adjacent, and working with students. I think there's a lot of importance in seeing that interdependence, seeing how it is my responsibility to be learning from them as they are learning from me, rather than imparting myself, and not acknowledging or taking time to acknowledge how that relationship is reciprocal, because presence is always reciprocal, or it's not presence at all. And so I'd really like that to be central in my coming alongside, is being as present to hear, and the light that is here and the light that's in other people. That to me is, it grounds the way forward.
Thank you.
What I'm hearing in all three of you and what I'm about to say is kind of this thread of this verse in Matthew where Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he says, "Whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me." And that verse, along with this Luke 4 passage that Sophia just read, are kind of the two passages that I view as like the guiding passages of my life. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, because I feel like we're all saying very similar things, my faith informs the way I work with people and the way that I have this orientation towards, coming alongside people, like Sarah said, and giving back, like Dia and Emily said, and serving others, and caring for others. And the ways that I do that I show up in community, that I show up for other people, that I give back to my community, has changed and probably will change for the rest of my life. The way I'm going to do that in the next couple years is teaching. I've been an education major, and what I've learned from being at EMU is that teaching is ministerial. I came into EMU thinking like, oh, I'll teach because I like English, because I like to read and write, so I'll teach. But really the content, after having gone through the EMU teacher ed program and having done student teaching and being a student chaplain, what I've realized is that the content is secondary and the relationship is the center of teaching. And in that way, teaching is ministerial. And students can show up in my classroom well when they feel supported and when they feel cared for. And that starts with me as the teacher. I can have snacks in my room, I can have water, I can build good classroom community first. I can meet their needs, I can come alongside them, and I can care for them, and then we can do the content. And so, to bring it all together, what you do for the least of these, you do for me. Jesus said. What we do for others is what we do for Jesus. When we care for others, it is an expression of our faith, and it's an expression of love. Love is the center. And that guides my sense of calling, my sense of vocation more than any job ever could.
Thank you so much, all of you. It's quite rich. Let's just share appreciation for these 4 senior student chaplains, if you would. Thank you so much. We're going to honor them in a minute with an honor cord, and we'll say more about that. So maybe the student chaplains who are introducing them, maybe come over, if you would, come over to the ramp. And just while we transition, turn to someone near you and just say 1 or 2 things that you heard that resonated with you. Or maybe they perplexed you. You're wondering, what on earth did they mean by that? Just share amongst yourself for 1 minute. 1 or 2 things you heard or you pondered. You guys can put your mics under the table, chairs. Come on. So I will put these on after you introduce and say what you're going to say. Is that right?
How long should the direction be? Is this like 15-second direction?
We have time. I don't know.
Whatever works.
All right, thank you. There's more to say, and so I hope you'll keep talking with folks about something you heard or noticed. It's become tradition to honor our senior student chaplains in this final campus worship service, honoring them with an honor cord. And the cords that we choose in Faith and Spiritual Life are light blue. Now, in academia, in higher education, colors mean things, and I think this one means education or something like that. It also, in some settings, represents spirit. Spirit of God, God's Spirit, Holy Spirit, the Spirit. And that's the symbolism with which we are offering to you. We're going to introduce each one briefly, name and maybe just something that you've noticed and valued and appreciate about these seniors. And then I will put over your heads one of these that you can wear in the commencement exercises. And as I do, the sense is, God be with you. Spirit empower you through the years.
I've known Sara Kennel for a couple years now. In that time, a few things have changed, but other things have definitely not. I think one of the things that has not changed at all is her deep dedication to presence, as she mentioned, and connection and conversation. If you've ever had a meeting with Sara or been in a class with her and seen her roll in 5 or 10 minutes late, and you're going, what was she doing? She was probably talking to somebody, and she couldn't bring herself to end the conversation. But you know, it's okay, because the next day she'll be talking to you and be late to something else for your sake. And it all balances out. And that's something that I found honestly really inspiring in how she functions as a person. That willingness to sacrifice for what she sees as the most important thing, which is conversation. And I suspect that when we look back on her time at EMU as a student chaplain, that I and probably most of you who have talked to her will remember not all the work she's done, because she has done a lot of work as a chaplain, but instead the conversations and the laughter you shared with her. And I think that's something that hopefully we can all take with us as she steps out of her role. And so I'd like to thank her for being an example of how to function in that way, in such a meaningful and wonderful way.
One thing I appreciate about Dia is her lighthearted and fun spirit, and also her commitment to helping us as student chaplains bond and raising our morale and offering support when it's needed. And yeah, I really appreciate you, Dia, and I'm glad that you finally learned my name. But yeah.
So for Miranda, I chose a scripture passage that I thought related to her. So Matthew 5:14 through 16 states, "A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house." So Miranda, you're that light, and you share your joy and your kindness with all of us, and we all become better because of it. And I just really admire how diligent you are in your creativity, whether it's like your next project for Center for Interfaith Engagement or your next crochet project, which I have loved hearing about, and just hearing about all these like little things in life that we might see as simple but bring so much joy, and just sharing that light with everyone. So it's just really easy to see the Spirit move through you, and I'll miss having you on the team a lot.
I'll be introducing Emily, and even though I've known her for this semester, as a student chaplain first year, as well, like me coming in first year as well, I appreciate a lot her leadership in YSERB, because I remember like how she helped me out like with the funds that I needed for like a fall retreat that I wanted to go to for the first time, and I couldn't go last semester because of time purposes. But I'm really grateful and really inspired for her leadership skills, her time management, and things like that. And just like as well, besides all that, like just staying present, like being able to hustle all that and being present. Because like how you call it, like nursing majors are equivalent as PCS, like pre-med majors as my major. So it's like, yeah, it's a lot. So I can relate a lot to her that, and yeah, just thank you.
We also want to honor one more person, and that is you, Clay Showalter. And this came from Student Chaplains. We've done a number of acts of kindness this year, and we consider who and what would we like to empower, encourage with kindness. And so, Clay, we're grateful for the technical support you've provided for campus worship, and also the other ways that you support EMU Faith and Spiritual Life. And we have a card and a gift certificate to the Little Grill for you. We heard that that's one of the places you like. So for Clay.
So thank you so much for coming to worship today, and I'm just going to share about some upcoming events that you might be interested in. So today there's a women's lacrosse game at 5 p.m. On Thursday there's the jazz ensemble concert at 7 in Lehman Auditorium. On Friday, the Chords of Distinction ceremony is at 10:15, and also on Friday evening at 7 in Lehman again is the Concerto Aria concert featuring one of the soloists is Jaden, who you saw play saxophone and cajon today. So if you want to see more of him, come to that concert. And then Friday and Saturday, EMU is hosting the ODAC Track and Field Championships. So there's a lot of really fun events coming up, and hope you can make it to those. But thank you for coming to worship today, and go in peace.